There's an online movement that says that it's, for it defends socialist countries. And I applaud anybody. If you're in agreement with me to defend China, Cuba, DPRK, anyone from imperialism, then I'm with you. And I'll always stand with you on that. But there are some who have taken this idea that these countries have patriotism, which they do. DPRK, Vietnam, Cuba, China, Laos. You can go on and on and on, right? With countries, Nicaragua, they have patriotism. They have great pride in the national development of their countries, and they should. There's a lot of good reasons for that. And the biggest reason that is often not spoken about is that these countries have histories of imperialist and foreign domination. Imperialism and foreign domination, colonialism, semi-colonialism, semi-feudalism, right? An international world system of imperialism has terrorized these countries and put them in the situation of having to build socialism from a very low point of development. So to be able to get past that, to forge real independence, not nominal independence, but independence economically, politically, and militarily, is a huge deal. And so I would salute that too if I lived in that situation. But it's not the same as American patriotism. It's not. We can't belie reality. It's not the same, right? The history of the United States is not the same. The American Revolution is not the Chinese Revolution. The American Revolution actually helped cement and strengthen chattel slavery, capitalism, and colonialism to a degree greater than prior, right? That's just the facts. Gerald Horne has documented this. This is the facts of the situation. American patriotism has not ever been at the center, even if it has been part of, right? Like you could say the CPUSA had moments, even in their thriving period, right? Even during the Second World War, you could say Paul Robeson, you could say all these had elements of patriotism in them, right? Appealing to the masses, because Americanism was very high at that time. You could say that was an element, but there's never been a political movement in the United States that's progressive or revolutionary that was driven by patriotism. Unlike in China and Cuba, where national liberation was indeed a driving force. We are not liberating the United States from what? The United States? Like, we need to be more concrete and specific. The principal contradiction in the United States is class, it's white supremacy, it's empire. It's not we're not liberating the nation. We're not. There are many oppressed nations in the United States, right? Indigenous nations, Black people, right? Those indigenous to Mexico, right? We can go on and on and on. There are many oppressed nations in the United States. We're not rallying behind a flag that has no political content or basis in socialist struggle. It doesn't make any sense, right? And now there's the question of, well, what do you do about those people who have pride in that flag? I think we need to do what political activists, journalists, analysts, people interested in revolution do, which is you start where people are, you work with people around issues that you are united on, and then you have real ideological conversations. You have ideological conversations with people that may disagree with you on some things. That's what you do. And you try to win them over to your organization, to your movement. And I think it's so interesting, this idea about patriotism, because, movements are not fueled by ideology, right? Even though the Chinese Revolution was fueled by patriotism, that wasn't what the Red Army, that was what the People's Liberation Army was fighting for. They weren't fighting for a new flag. They were fighting for everything that flag would represent, right? It would represent the liberation of the peasants from feudalism and semi-colonialism. It would represent the eradication of imperialist subversion. It would represent the ability to eradicate and alleviate poverty, raise the standard of living of the people, right? What Mao said, China has stood up. It's a new China. So this whole idea about a flag and about being a patriot, in a polls that say, oh well, people have patriotic sentiments. Polls can say a whole lot of things, but they don't necessarily reflect the actual reality of our movements are not driven by sentiment. They're driven by real material things. So a bunch of workers, sure, all of them may say, yeah, I'm not going to spit on the flag. All right, well, we're not going to spit on the flag with them. We're going to fight for better wages, for a union, for maybe even taking over the company and running it ourselves. We're not going to fight for the flag as it already is represented. We're going to fight for something concrete and material. And then our ideology is going to be reflective of that. We're going to fight against these endless wars. We're going to fight against U.S. imperialism, this endless expansion of the military budget. We're going to fight against a mass incarceration state, against racist policing. We're going to fight all of these things. And then we're also going to have ideological conversations. And it's for damn sure that they're likely not going to, unless you want them to and you're trying to, divert into some kind of conversation about the value of the American flag. That's a high level ideological debate, which is very much detached from movement politics. The American flag represents what was established in 1776 and then 1783, which is the United States. And what is the United States? It's a capitalist, imperialist, and colonial country. That's its origins. And the vast majority of any political movement that has espoused that flag has either been heavily compromised by nationalistic, chauvinistic sentiment, or has literally been forces seeking to impose nationalistic and chauvinistic sentiment. This is the history of the United States, and we have to be true to that. So, no, Cuban patriotism, DPRK, patriotism in Korea, patriotism in China, in Vietnam is not the same as the United States. It's not the same content. It's not. You can't say there's nothing proving that. You know, if it's for you, if you feel like that's a subjective opinion. If it is for you and you feel that way, that's great. Then you've got to build a movement built around American patriotism as defined as socialism. And you have to test that out in the world, not just in social media, not just, on streams. That you have to go test that out. I'm not going to stop you from testing it out. This is not about me trying to cancel or whatever. This is just a disagreement. And it's one that I think is rooted in years of experience, So I think that's the other side of this is, right, we should continue to unite around things that we agree on. Continue to talk about and defend socialist countries, defend the integrity of socialism from people like Fourth Internationalists. But we can't go to this other place. It's very popular now, right? To go to this other place. Well, make America great again, and American exceptionalism is on high, and it's all over the media, and it's, of course, social media is going to help fuel it. As John Pilger said, these are U.S. corporations fueling this sentiment, and so we're going to then make these gross distortions out of it. We're going to create what are just ideological inconsistencies, which is this idea that somehow you can export you can export and compare American patriotism to the patriotism of socialist countries. I'm sorry, it's like a complete reversal of the actual history, right? Nothing about American patriotism symbolizes national liberation. It doesn't. Most national liberations in movements that happened in the United States, Black liberation, American Indian movement, etc., they weren't holding up that flag as something that they were necessarily proud of. I'm talking about the movements, not straw manning like individuals who at one time, right, like Paul Robeson. No, we're talking about the entire movement, right? We're talking about organizations like the UNIA, like even the Communist Party of the United States, like like the Black Panther Party, like the American Indian Movement, AIM. We're talking about these were national liberation movements, the CP less so. The CP had a different kind of line that was both positive and, had its drawbacks. As we all know, the CP has had its own kind of history, just like any other organization. So, we have to be very sober in this analysis that national liberation movements in the United States have not upheld this. So if you want to be really uh, uh, specific about this, then I think it's important, So that's my opinion on that, right? That I think there's a connection here because all of this is distortions of socialism and distortions of ideology around socialism. So deformed worker state versus, you know, Korea, China, Cuba being so patriotic that it's the same as American patriotism. It's all attempts to revise socialist ideology to meet what I think are kind of personal endeavors that are about endeavors that don't have much basis, if any at all, in movement politics. Because I haven't seen it. I mean, I've been in unions, anti-war organizations, communist organizations. I have not seen this be a core part of what people are concerned about, right? People are not concerned about whether they're going to eat patriotism or be housed in patriotism or get peace from patriotism. They're generally not concerned about that. Ending racism with patriotism. I'm interested in how do we fight, cover, understand, and analyze the existing imperialist system so that our ideology, in our ideological debates, our conversations, and the ways in which the ideology is expressed and led by a movement, transpires. That's what I'm interested in, developing that synthesis between our actions, our words, and our deeds. That's what I'm most interested in. And that's how we build socialism, is synthesizing those two together, helping educate, agitate, and organize people into socialism, into a socialist movement, into anti-imperialism. Because usually anti-imperialism has to go along with socialism. You can't really separate the two.